Hey, what's going on, guys? So today I wanted to mix up the formula a little bit. Lately I've been doing videos that are a bit more structured, a bit more polished, and I wanted to take a step back, get back to doing a video more in the style of when I first started putting stuff up here earlier this year, where I just take out my camera, got a rough idea for a script for what I want to talk about, and just go with it and see what comes up. So I decided I wanted to do that this time around, and talk a little bit about why I love voice acting and just acting in general, and talk about the stuff that really makes it important for me. And one of the reasons I do this is because I think sometimes it can be so easy if we make a career out of doing something that we really love, something that we've got a passion for. It can be difficult to stay in touch with the reason why we got started with it in the first place, if it's something that we really love. Because so often you can get caught up in the different rat races of life, where you deal with the stresses of, having to pay the bills. So you're thinking more in terms of money making than from like the art of it. Sometimes you get caught up in like the social games of it. You get caught up in social media, where you want to be able to present yourself in a certain way to peers, family members, friends, whatever. You want to have a certain presence, and compare yourself to other people, and want to be able to show like, hey, I'm cool, look at me, look at the stuff I'm doing. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. I think it's good to get attention when you're doing something well, and it's nice to get praises and encouragements from people when they can see that you've been putting in work and that you're providing something of value up there to the world. But sometimes these conventions, these social conventions, can distract us and make us forget what originally got us into doing something in the first place. I mean, I see other, people who've had a degree of success in life and whatever they're doing, and they started off maybe really passionate, maybe, really innovative, and then they get a certain degree of success, they start getting enough of attention, a fair bit of money, and sometimes, not always, but sometimes these people, they kind of lose touch with the magic that got them there, and they get complacent because they get comfortable. They get so caught up in the other games of making money, trying to support a different lifestyle, trying to preserve an image, and it becomes less and less about why they got into it in the first place. Like pretty much everybody who's wanted to get into a career or do something that they really enjoyed, whether it's something creative like, YouTube or acting or painting or something, or maybe they want to be a professional athlete or do something else that they just really love. People got into it and they stay with it because they just love what they do. It's just they enjoy playing the game for the game itself, even more so than what the game gives them. And like I said, it can be easy to lose track of that sometimes when things are going well, when other stressors come in. So one of the reasons I want to make this video is so that I have a way to kind of anchor myself to why I originally got into this in the first place. Is, other stresses in life can sometimes keep me from remembering why I got into things. So why I love acting. So as anyone who's been watching my channel for any amount of time can tell, I tend to wax philosophical quite a bit. I like talking about, philosophy, what I think it means to live a good life, values of hard work, how to set goals, and, processing your emotions in a healthy way. So pretty much everything that I want to do, I would like to find a deeper, more meaningful, real sense of purpose behind why I'm doing. And acting's been the same way for me. So for me, I was thinking about for a while making a video about this, but in some ways I really consider acting to be kind of a quasi-religious experience for me. Like some people, they love the art, they love expressing themselves, they enjoy, learning lines and playing a character and stuff. And that's all great, but like for me, like you can really take the practice of acting so much deeper than a lot of people are talking about. And that's part of the thing that really keeps me in it for the long term. So examples of this. So a big part of acting, obviously being proficient at acting, is you want to be in touch with your feelings, right? Especially in like a Western school of thought. It's like if you're you're performing a character, you're trying to get in touch with the character's intentions and motivations, and you try and relate to the character. You try and see like, okay, if this character is angry or this character is ambitious or this character is upset about something, I want to find a way to relate that to my own life. Like where's a time in my life where maybe I've exhibited something similar to what my character is going through, so I can really connect with it and feel that emotion and make it visceral. So it really behooves you, if you're a really competent actor, to be very in touch with your emotions. And that can be a whole, explorative process by itself, where I found, I've been doing a lot of personal work on myself, and I found that some of the stuff I do there, where I'm doing work where maybe I'm picking up some old traumas from my life, where I'm going back and thinking about some of the landmark events in my life that made me process things and think about things in certain ways, going back and thinking about, like, old emotional trauma, things where I was hurt, things where I felt like I wasn't good enough, things that, I felt like I was betrayed by people. And you go back and you start to process and articulate that stuff. And you start to get, like I said, in better touch with your emotions. And it's funny how, in addition to just helping me, live my life better, it's also helped me to become a better actor, because so often, life is hard, and sometimes we want to shut off our emotions, where if we've got pain in our life, we like to just put it away in the closet and not have to think about it and focus our energies elsewhere. But if you actually have the courage and take the time to learn about some of that stuff, that's where the real healing comes in. And it can be hard, it can be painful, it can take some time to do, but ultimately I think that's what leads us to a happier life. And doing that kind of stuff also opens up your heart and mind to, I think, be the best actor that you can in this respect, where all of a sudden I'm able to start really delving into these roles and feeling what's going on in the context of the story, because I've allowed myself to feel, because I'm not just shutting off, those painful emotions. I've been able to sort of integrate that into part of myself. And I think that's a big part of, about doing this thing, and doing so in a healthy way as well. I've heard people say that if you're an actor and you want to present your, if you want to perform a character who's dealt with a lot of trauma, sometimes people will dig up their own trauma in their life. And I think there is an unhealthy way to do this, where if you've got a really painful memory, maybe you had a really bad breakup, you were abused or betrayed by somebody, I don't think it's necessary, and say you have that experience and you haven't processed it in a healthy way yet, it's not necessarily a healthy thing to try and drum that up and relive that trauma just for the sake of delivering a more real performance. I would be a little bit skeptical about that approach, especially long term. I mean, if you're just constantly reliving past traumas and putting yourself in that headspace just to, give a good performance, that can really mess with you too. So there's something to be said about finding healthy ways to process this stuff. And, we've all got crap in our lives, but there's ways we can make peace with those things. We can process those emotions in a healthy way and kind of get over it and get through it, so that we can exhibit those emotions again without letting them destroy us or letting them really take us over. And it's funny how much, as I mentioned before, doing that kind of work is connected to my work as just being more embodied as an actor, of being in touch with my emotions, learning how to articulate my emotions, and really have a sense for really being able to feel your body. Like, if you take a step, my roommate's making noises, I don't know if you hear that on the camera, but if you take the step and you take a step back and you really feel like, okay, what does it feel like in my body when I'm exhibiting a certain emotion? Like when I feel angry, maybe I have a pressure in my head or in my chest, or if I feel anxious, maybe there's some pressure there as well. And when you can be in touch enough with your body that you start to understand the physical symptoms and the manifestations that come into your body whenever you're dealing with a certain emotion, and you can remember that, then you can anchor that emotional memory and call upon it when you want to present it in an acting setting. So I can be like, okay, not only do I know what it feels like, or not only do I have memories of what it feels like to exhibit these emotions, but I know what it feels like. I understand what it is to exhibit that sort of pressure in my body when these emotions well up. It's kind of like when you're going to the gym and you know that if you're doing bicep day, you understand where your muscles are going to be contracting and feeling it. And that can be a really interesting introspective exercise as an actor, as you start to learn to just feel yourself and process your emotions better. So that's definitely a big part of it for me. And that's, taking it to a whole nother level when I start thinking about, okay, you're not just acting, you're not just presenting yourself as a character. It's like, in order to become a really good actor, you have to become a more complete human being, I think, in order to be able to really and truly embody some of these roles, especially if you're doing a variety of different kind of characters, which this is another point I wanted to get into. I've always felt that one of the marks of a truly great actor, particularly a great voice actor, is that you can portray a variety of different characters. Some actors, they've, got their types. They tend to play a lot of the same kind of characters in whatever movies that they do. Maybe they fall into a certain genre or certain stereotype. And, that's all well and good, and not to poo-poo that. But for me, part of the game of acting is, how can I find a character or something that is so different from how I actually am, and how can I relate to that individual who might have a totally different life experience than me? And a lot of that is that's been a really interesting process as well. So some days maybe you're a military officer, other days maybe you're just a stay-at-home dad, or you're a drug dealer, or a drug addict, or maybe you're an alien, maybe you're just a monster, like you're just some weird demon thing that crawled out of a hole in a magic story. And it's interesting to try and connect with emotionally on that level and put yourself in the shoes of all these characters that seem so different from you. But then one of the things you realize when you start doing some of that deeper work is you find out you find out kind of how malleable the human condition is. Like, I start to look at different people, and maybe people who live very different lives than me have made very different life choices, some of which I might even disagree with quite a bit. Think like, hey man, you really know how to get your life in order there. But when you can really open up your heart and you can kind of, you can pause the judgmental part of your mind and really look at and try to understand, okay, maybe this person's making choices I definitely wouldn't make, but where's this coming from? Why does the person act in the way that they do? And you start becoming curious. You start trying to empathize and sympathize with them. And as you continue to do that and open up your heart, I've started to realize that a lot of individuals who, both characters that I play as and individuals in real life, a lot of people, even people who seem very different than you, have a lot more in common with you than you might have originally thought. And when you can open up your heart and you sort of understand their motives and their wants and fears and stuff, you start to realize, like, okay, I can understand where you're coming from, like why you act in a certain way in your life based on the experiences you've had, based on the way you process your emotions. And I can connect with that to a point, and maybe even see a part of myself in that, where like, if I had similar experiences, if I wanted similar things out of life and I'd had, similar background, how I could have fallen into a similar trap as other people. And that can be kind of scary too, to realize that there's a part of you that could be like, I live a pretty comfortable, fairly average American life, but I could see the part of me that if I had grown up in different circumstances, how I could have ended up as a criminal, or I could have ended up as, as somebody who's just in a much darker place than I was if I had exposed myself to certain things and had different wants in my life. And it can be scary to realize that. You realize how much of a monster you could be. You realize how far you could really fall if you let yourself go. And you realize that some of these people who seem like they don't have their lives together, or they're living drastically different lives than you are, and you can take it both ways. It might be someone way worse than you, or it might be someone who's, done a whole lot with their life and lived a very successful life. And you can see yourself in all these kinds of people. And that also, I think, is incredibly valuable as an actor, to be able to see yourself in all these different people who you might not have been able to see yourself if you hadn't taken some time to really look at them. And you realize, like, okay, I don't necessarily have to be typecast as an actor when I realize this. It's not like I just have my one way of looking at things and processing things. Like, I can look at someone and realize why they do what they do, and I can empathize with that, and maybe I can even model that as an actor. I can start to draw upon my understanding, my relation to that experience, and present that in such a way that I can portray a character with very different intentions and motives and perspectives on the world than myself. And, that's, I think, is a great exercise by itself, where that's probably something we could use even just beyond the acting scope, but just in general, where you start to realize that these people, as different as we are, have a lot more in common than we might think when we start to really do some of that deeper work. And that will just radically shift your perspective as well. All of a sudden, you don't have as much of an us versus them perspective when you go out into the world. You start realizing that, like I said, people have a lot more in common than you might initially realize. And that can be kind of wild. And you start to have more respect for people, more patience and empathy with individuals, because you understand there's a degree of rationale behind why they're doing what they're doing. And you see maybe people who are very hurtful. Maybe they leave a lot of, negative posts on social media and stuff. And you can understand that a lot of those people, the people who tend to hurt others, tend to be the ones who are hurting the most. And instead of maybe being like really irritated with them, if you can open up your heart a bit, you start to feel sorry for them. You start to empathize with them because you realize like where they're coming from and how you might have acted similarly if you were in a similar situation. So yeah, all those kind of exercises, as I've been, doing some of my own work this last year, has really come to a head with me. And it's just really allowed me to deepen my acting practice to something that, like I said, is it can be kind of a transcendent, wild experience where you start to just feel and exhibit more and see life in such a different, richer, better way than you might have otherwise done if you hadn't started to really delve into that stuff. So I think those are my main thoughts that I wanted to share today. And this stuff really excites me, and it just fascinates me as you start to do some of that deeper work and understand what the human condition is really about, and you start to connect with people and you start to exhibit different emotions and you just process things on different levels than you used to. And that's a big part of why I love acting, because it's such a great window into that sort of realm of thinking, of putting yourself in another person's shoes, like really allowing yourself to stretch your mind and heart in a way and challenge your perspective on how the way things ought to be, the way lives ought to live. And I think that can be a tremendously eye-opening and enriching experience. And that's part of the reason why I love acting. I mean, as fun as it is just to, play cool characters, it's also fascinating to do a lot of this deep work and just do the kind of stuff that makes you really understand life and people on a much deeper level. So this might be my longest video I've posted on the channel ever. So I'm enjoying myself here. I might do some more of these videos from time to time. I know it gets a little bit rambly and a lot of people might not stick around until the very end here, but it's fun for me to just take a little time, take a step back and process some of this stuff, and just kind of let the video go where it takes me. All right, for any one of you who decide to stick around to the very end, I so appreciate you guys. Appreciate everyone who stops by, leaves a like, leaves a comment, stays part of the conversation. I would do this stuff, I think, if nobody watched, but knowing that there are people out there who can connect with what I'm talking about and relate to stuff or get something from it, that just makes the whole process that much more enriching. So super appreciate you guys. And that's my video for this week. I've got a few ideas for what I want to work on next, but we'll cross that bridge when we get there. All right, guys, hope you have a fantastic week. I'll be here. Feel free to reach out. Whatever. Yeah. Have a great week. Take care. God bless. I'll see you next time.